அனைத்து தமிழர்களின் தலைவர் பேராசிரியர் கனடா நாட்டில் இருந்து வந்திருக்கும் ஸ்ரீரஞ்சன் அவர்களின் உரை. ஈழத்தமிழரை ஒரு தனி தேசமாக அங்கீகரிப்பதால் மட்டுமே இலங்கை அரசின் ஈழத்தமிழர் மீதான இன அழிப்பை நிறுத்த முடியும் என்ற இன்றைய அரசியல் யதார்த்த நிலையில் இந்த உரை இடம்பெறும்.
I would now like to invite Professor R. Sriranjan, President of the International Council of Ulam Tamil Canada, to speak on how recognising the Ulam Tamils as a nation is the only way to stop the Tamil genocide by the Sri Lankan state.
Thank you, Nandri. Recognizing Ulam Tamils as a nation is the only way to stop the Tamil genocide by Sri Lanka. So, in order to understand what genocide is and what we have gone through over the years, I thought I would enumerate what has happened in the past 75 years. So, to look at the Tamils in Sri Lanka as a nation, we have to go back in history. We have lived in the island for over 3 millennia. At least recent archaeological evidence that is coming out of Kulali at least shows that we have had connection to Tamil people in southern India for over that long. And if you look at geological time too, the island was connected to India by land bridge. So it is inevitable that everything would have been Tamil at the time, right? So one of the other groups that was brought to Sri Lanka by the British was in the 1860s, 1850s to work in the plantation. So that's a different group. So when I say Ulam Tamils, I'm referring to the group that is indigenous to Sri Lanka. So 1505, the colonial rulers arrived. First it was Portuguese from 1505 to 1659, followed by Dutch and the British. During the time of the arrival of the Portuguese, there was Sinhala and Tamil kingdoms separately ruled. The last kingdom of Jaffna was defeated in 1619. The Dutch ruled from 1660 to 1796, during which time they also defeated one king in Vanni. Of course, British came in 1796, and by 1948 they left the island, calling it independence. I said in quotes independence because the Tamil people never had independence. It just passed from one oppressor to another oppressor. That's what happened. Okay. So when the British arrived, they merged the three kingdoms into one in 1833, which is well documented in the Playground Minutes, which clearly shows that there were two distinct nations that was living on the island with their own culture and identity. When the British left Ceylon, it was a secular state with the Sinhalese, which is consisting of about 90% Buddhist and about 10% Christian, and Tamils around 50% Hindu, 30% Christian, and 20% Muslim. And three languages were official languages at the time, with a parliamentary democracy with British monarchy as the head. And then legal safeguards to the Tamil people for any laws that are affecting the Tamil people to be voted on by a majority of the Tamil people. It is called the Article 29 of the Constitution. However, a planned genocide already began. The unity state structure allowed the numerically larger Sinhala majority population to pass any legislation that affected the Tamil people. Then they started colonizing the Tamil homeland, and we started losing our territory. And over 7 decades, the operation has been continued on. Now, before we go on to talk about genocide, I think we need to go back to the person who defined the term genocide soon after the Second World War, during the time of the Nazi Germany and the massacre of the Jewish people. Raphael Lemkin said, the destruction of a national identity of the oppressed group and the imposition of the national identity of the oppressor is called genocide. Now, it can take various forms. If you see what is happening today in Sri Lanka, that's exactly what is happening. The Buddhist temples are being built in areas where there are no Buddhist live. So it is a form of genocide. Albeit now there is no killing, but we are losing our land and our territory. Very soon we will be minorities on our own land, where we have a majority. Now, if you look at the different elements of genocide, killing members of the group is only one aspect of the genocide. Whereas, if you can cause serious bodily harm, mental harm for the members of the group, that is what is experienced by the people today in an open prison in the north and east. Now, deliberately inflicting conditions that makes the life difficult for the people, that is also genocide. If you look at the another aspect, preventing birth within the group, this is what happened to people who were brought into Manic Farm soon after the 2009. Many of the women were forcibly made so that they couldn't bear babies, right? So these are all, and also they took away children from the camps to the south, and some of them, the mothers are still searching. For 4 years now on, they have been searching on the roadside, making vigils to bring their children back, but nothing has happened so far. So all of these constitute genocide, and we are experiencing all of this even today. Now, 7 decades of genocide, 1948, 1 million Tamils lost their citizenship. These are the Tamils brought by the British to work on the plantation. Now, this is violating the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 15. Then 1949, singular colonization of Tamil homelands began. We lost Ampara district in the southern tip of Tamil Nadu. 1952, the main political party proposed that Buddhism will be made the state religion. So it became from secular state to a Buddhist-centric state. Then, not to be outdone, the opposition party promised they will be making singularity official language in 1956. Then again, violation of Article 1 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. 56, in 1953, protest happened. About 150 Tamils were hacked to death in Delaware, and there was mob violence started against the Tamil people. Now, the Tamil political parties, of course, had non-violent protest. Here in 1956, there was against the Single-Only Act. The father of the Tamil nation at the time was Honorable Sriranjan. He was in a Satyagraha campaign, Gandhian style, but the government, of course, attacked them using guns from the south. Now, it progressed on to a pogrom, full-scale pogrom in 1958, where we lost over 300 Tamil people, tens of thousands of people displaced, and millions in property damage to Tamil-owned businesses. Now, if you look at the 1971, the thing progresses on. I can't enumerate everything, but I just want to tell you how the educational ability and the education was suppressed for the Tamil people. This is a graph showing the medical faculty admissions and the engineering faculty admissions, how it declined for the Tamil people by the standardization of marks, which is again violating Article 26 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Now, not only that, in 1972, the government of Sri Lanka changed the name from Ceylon to Sri Lanka and enacted a constitution in 72 which severed all ties to the British monarch. So it became a republican constitution. They threw the protection that the Tamil people had, and the Tamil MPs were never part of this process. So with that, we should have reverted back to our own sovereignty, which we lost in 1833, but that never happened. So the United Kingdom has a moral responsibility to restore that, because the moment they, in 1972, they enacted the Republican Constitution, Tamils no longer become party to the original Constitution. Now, the Tamil political action was actually non-violent from 1940 to 1976. The government, of course, reacted with violence. So there were a lot of pogroms against the Tamils in all over the place. I can enumerate a lot over the time, but there's not enough time to describe them all here. And of course, the Tamil, of course, they fought with non-violent means. Then the turning point came in 1976. They had the Vatikota resolution. After 30 years of non-violent struggle, finally they asked for a separate state. That was the manifesto under which they were elected. In 1977 election, over 82% of the voters voted for Tamil Nadu. In any other civilized world, 82% voting to secede would have already separated. But that never happened to us, unfortunately. We didn't forcefully ask for what we really voted on. And our politicians did not follow through, that was a big mistake. Then 77, in retaliation, the Sinhalese attacked the Tamils. I personally lost my family home in 1977. I was almost going to be killed. Fortunately, I spoke the other language, so I escaped. That's why I'm here today. But so many other people were not so lucky. Over 40,000 Tamils lost everything. They moved to the north. And this is again violation of UDHR Article 3 and 7. And then 79, the government enacted the Prevention of Terrorism Act, which gave carte blanche right for the police to arrest any Tamil person. So most of the Tamil youth were targeted, they were arrested and tortured. And over time, you can see the map of Tamil. You can see most of these places that are in dark shade here have been occupied or taken over by the Sinhalese. So we are losing our land as well. Now this is the library of in Jaffna Public Library, which is considered at that time one of the finest in South Asia, with over 97,000 volumes and some ancient manuscripts. It was set on fire by the two government ministers led mobs in 1981. So it was destroyed. We lost the cultural treasure that we had. And then 1983, so on, there were so many pogroms I'm listing here, and this is one photo that appeared in a British newspaper. This person was burned alive afterwards. And I actually left on the day this pogrom started, July 22nd. I well remember it was a Friday. I was on the flight out. That night the violence started, and my uncle's house from which I left was destroyed. Tamil students lose faith, so they band together and said non-violence is not going to work. And if you look at the UDHR, Universal Declaration of Human Rights Preamble, it says, whereas it is essential, man is not to be compelled to have recourse as a last resort to rebellion against tyranny and oppression, that human right should be protected by the rule of law. So the Tamils tried everything non-violently. Eventually, it led to the armed struggle. So birth of the Tamil liberation movement had several militant groups. Eventually, the Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam emerged as one of the formidable forces with air and sea power to fight the government of Sri Lanka. So they were able to control territory. At some point, the government has to come back to negotiate. So with the help of the Norwegian government, there was a 2002 peace accord was signed, and direct dialogue between the government of Sri Lanka and the LTTE began. And there was a de facto state operating in the north and east at the time for several years, and I was fortunate to be able to go and experience the freedom enjoyed by the Tamil people in the de facto state. I spent 2 weeks in Vandi and Jaffna. But Jaffna was still under the control of the government. You can see a huge contrast in the people's attitude and the behavior among the Tamil people in Jaffna Peninsula under army control versus in Vandi. In Vandi, people were enjoying the freedom. But soon, many of the pacts that were signed with the government of Sri Lanka from 2002 to 2005, none were implemented. So over a 3-year period, Sinhalese government showed their colors by not honoring any of the pacts they signed. So far I haven't seen any pacts honored by them anyways. So there, after all these things, sometime in 2005, the President Rajapaksa was elected. His main campaign promise was not to recognize Tamil homeland, and no for federal solution, and no international mediation. So everything went back to square one. So if you look at, he was supported by the Buddhist monks party called JHU, and they were very violently opposed to the Norwegian. They were burning the Norwegian flag in protest for the involvement of the Norwegian government. Now if you look at the homes people were living at the time, Air Force bombed the Tamils' house. Soon they became destitute. They moved to forest areas, and then they ended up in camps like this. So they were living in a much more comfortable way, and most time they lost everything they owned. Here's another picture of these trees, Palmyra palms. These take about 30 years to grow to this height. This environmental destruction of the Tamil homeland. And here is another photo of the Chenchole massacre where a group of children were being trained on first aid, and the government knew that this was happening. They bombed this place, and we lost 129 children in that attack in 2006. So 2008, Sri Lanka withdrew from the accord and started attacking. So soon hospitals, churches, and none was free. Everything was being bombed. So slowly the Tamil people had to move towards areas of safety, and finally they were cornered in Mullawaikal, and this is what happened in the final stages of the war in Mullawaikal. You can see the destruction. And it was full of civilians, over 400,000. Now this is after the war, 2007, during this 2007, this is a cemetery at Visnumadu. You can see all the cemeteries intact. But soon in 2010, soon after the war, they bulldozed the cemetery. So even the dead can't be free. Here is a picture of near the Palali airport, which is only 3 miles from my house. This is what was taken a satellite photo in 2011. By 2014, government has taken over most of this, settled the Sinhalese. This is only 3 miles from my home. So you can look at the fate of Tamils now. Is 1.5 million Tamils have left the country. That is about 25%, 1 in 4 persons that's left. Over 500,000 internally displaced, and over 300,000 Tamils have been killed over the pogroms that are listed here, and many of the Tamil homes and businesses have been occupied or taken over by the government. So Indian Tamil nation wants a UN-sponsored independent investigation, because we don't have trust in the judicial system within Sri Lanka. We don't have justice, equal justice anyways. The recognition of Indian Tamil people as a nation, that's the only way to protect the Tamils in Sri Lanka. And we also need an interim UN protection mechanism to stop the ongoing genocide of the Tamils in the island. We asked the British government to join they were responsible for our predicament because they joined the kingdom as one in 1833. The decolonization should have happened to us, it never happened. So in 72, when the Republican Constitution was passed, we should have been decolonized, but didn't happen. So Britain has a moral responsibility to decolonize and set us free. Thank you very much.